Let's start first with quarterbacks that need to make jumps, will make jumps. I don't know how you guys intended to start this segment, but let's start with maybe the more polarizing of this conversation. And let's just go to the SEC. Lagway and Arch Manning kind of built up as the future of the quarterback position in that conference. I know Nuss is there. I know Sellers is there. Some guys that we've seen put together full seasons already. But Cole, I want to get your thoughts first on Lagway and Manning specifically, because I do feel like those guys are so polarizing, and a matchup we'll see in the Swamp this year. Lord willing, both of them, play in that game and everything. But just thoughts on those two specifically.
I think that Lagway is one of those players that can transcend a program so much that we end up talking about them being an 8-win team, but they are the most lethal 8-win team in the world of college football. That's just how I feel. Their schedule still is a murderer's row. We don't know where we're getting Miami. We don't know what we're getting in Florida State. And they still have games against Texas A&M. They still have to play in Jacksonville against Georgia. They still have to play Texas. They still have to play Tennessee down the Swamp. They have to play Kentucky. We don't know what we're going to see from this overall team, but they do return all 5 starting offensive linemen. They're better at the wide receiver position. They have guys that were freshmen last year that weren't really supposed to play, having extensive reps under their belt, which I think is a really good thing, but it all hinges on Lagway's success and how much he grows. The big question is, what are we going to see from him from spring? Is he going to play? Is he going to practice? Is he going to be limited in practice? Billy Napier's already come out and said that right now he's going through the throwing motion. We're going to figure out what is going to be the best course when it's about his playing time. It's about his number of reps. I think that you need to see him feel more comfortable in the pocket. I think that one of the few things that he did last year that was very inconsistent was he would throw in a double coverage, but that's a young quarterback mistake. And also, I think the thing that's going to be the biggest blessing for him is that he doesn't have to worry about playing in this quarterback rotation. Last season, Graham Mertz, I think, earned the right to at least keep the starting job, but fans were clamoring for the kid from Willis, Texas, and the Gatorade Player of the Year to become our savior in the Swamp. We want him on the field. Well, Mertz is gone, and now this is Lagway's team. So we're going to see him, I think, build that rapport with an Aiden Mizell, with a Trey Wilson, with a Dallas Wilson, the 5-star wide receiver that committed to Oregon only to flip at the last second after enrolling in Eugene to go to Gainesville. In Verntrell Brown, there's so much to like, I think, about Florida's overall offense. And they have a solid run game with Jaden Baugh, but it all starts off with the quarterback. I want to see him double his passing total. I want to see him double his touchdown rate. I want to see him limit his turnovers. Not cut it in half, but I would say at least maybe 5 to 6 turnovers and get a prominent win. It may be against Texas. It may be against Georgia. It may be against Tennessee in the Swamp, but get one of those signature wins that stabilizes you as the next big-time name. Arch Manning is really interesting, guys, because my thing with him is I've been here before. And what's really fun is that I've been here before with a team that has the same logo and a different shade of orange, and fans decided to dub him the next big-time threat before we really got to see him unfold, and that was Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee last year. Everybody after the bowl game with Iowa said, well, Nico is the dude. Nico is going to lead us to the promised land, and Nico's going to be – and I'm like, guys, you have a solid defense. You have a great run game headlined by Dylan Sampson. Your wide receivers are dropping balls left and right. This isn't 2022 with Hendon Hooker, where he had Cedric Tillman and a guy like a Jalen Hyatt or a Brew McCoy and great tight end play. They were limited at times. And that's kind of how I feel right now about Texas. I think Texas is going to the college football playoff. I think when you look at their schedule, I think when you look at their overall roster construction, what they've been able to bring in from the transfer portal, what they've been able to recruit, number 1 recruiting class in the SEC, number 1 recruiting class in college football, they will be a playoff team. But for anybody to have these pre-recollection anecdotes of what Arch Manning has to do to call year 1 a success is out of their mind. They're worse than Vol Twitter right now, because this is a guy that is losing his 4 starting offensive linemen. He's losing his best 3 wide receivers. He's losing a tight end. He's losing one of the better running backs out of the backfield in Jaden Blue. It's a brand new system for him. And now it's his job. He doesn't have the security blanket of, hey, we're only going to put you in on 4th down. You're going to run it for a 1st down. You come off the field and people love 16. And we know what the trajectory is down in Austin. And Texas fans, this is not a shot at you. I'm part of you. I love you. I love what the burnt orange pride is in the SEC. But we've done this every single offseason. One quarterback wasn't good enough because he wasn't Colt McCoy, so you call for the next guy's name. You call for the next guy's name. It wasn't Sam Ellinger, you want to call for the next guy. You want to call for Casey Thompson. Wasn't Casey Thompson, you want to call for Hudson Card. Wasn't Quinn Ewers, then you want to call for Arch Manning. You always do this. Arch has all the intangibles to be one of the best quarterbacks. He's mobile. He's got a great arm. His accuracy, I think, is drastically improved from what we saw from his time at Isidore Newman out in New Orleans to what we saw in his one season so far with Texas. But he's got to build that rapport and that relationship. You don't have a Matthew Golden coming on in right now. You have a really good up-and-comer in Ryan Wingo. You have a really good, I think, number 2 in DeAndre Moore. You have some young guys like Lockhart coming on in, but you don't have those veterans. Let's give him time. If I'm Texas, it's a little bit different than Florida. Florida, for me, I want to see DJ Lagway take that next step forward where he is the enforcer, where everybody who comes into the swamp is looking at him and going, I hate number 2. I hate playing against number 2. It's disgusting. He is my main threat. For Texas, it's, hey, let's get Arch as comfortable as possible because of when he gets on a roll, when that confidence is through the roof, good luck stopping him. Nobody's going to be able to take him down.
I want to ask you about Tennessee in a minute, but I do want to move over to Tom. Tom, I know that Penn State, kind of your specialty, and so this one fits pretty well with you. Is it fair to say that Drew Aller was a pretty good quarterback next year, but for Penn State to achieve the level of success he needs to be, is elite, a word that we would use there? Like, does he need to be top 5 in the country? And will he? Like, just thoughts around a jump that Aller could make. A different kind of jump, right? Like, I'd say he's ahead of where Lagway and Arch are right now. But will he stay ahead if those guys do make leaps? Like, what are your thoughts on him?
I think it's an easy argument to say that Drew Aller is the best returning starting quarterback in 2025 in college football. You could argue Cade Klubnik. I'd hear that argument. I'd hear Lenora Sellers, those sorts of things. Nico, not as much. I understand some of the arguments that are out there, but who are you really going to put above him? And that
Garrett Nussmeier.
Nussmeier's better than Drew Aller.
I would do it. I would say it.
Nussmeier's got to prove it with LSU, and like you talked about it last time out, a lot of his stats, garbage time stats, they had to throw the ball to stay in games, that sort of stuff. It's a complete inverse with Drew Aller. I don't think Drew Aller needs to be elite for Penn State to credibly compete for the national championship. Would it be great if he was? Yeah, of course. Penn State, I think, is going to lean even harder into its running game this upcoming season. The departure of the unicorn, Tyler Warren, is significant. There still really is no clear answer at wide receiver for Penn State, so that is going to be determined in the offseason if somebody actually steps up. Kyron Hudson from USC, Devontae Ross stepping up literally from the Sun Belt at Troy. So some transfer guys and transfer guys out, and Harrison Wallace III and Amari Evans. So lots of answers that have to come up there. Drew Aller can't catch his own passes, so I kind of expect you to see a little bit better of a version of Drew Aller this coming year. 2023, he was very timid and conservative with the football, but very safe with the football. He got more aggressive, took more risks, and he looked more like a leader and a guy in control of the offense in 2024. I think he takes another step that will help Penn State, but I firmly believe, and I'm biased. I do a show about Penn State. I'm an alum. I think Drew Aller is the best returning starting quarterback in 2025. Now, this whole conversation about jumps, I want to dive in on the Arch Manning thing. I look at data, right? He started 2 games last year. So you're going from practically nothing to something. So his jump inevitably will be substantial. He's the guy now. I love his physical skill set. I think it plays into exactly what Steve Sarkisian wants to do. My big question for Arch, how are you going to handle a big game a la at home against Georgia when you look like deer in headlights? I can forgive a true freshman. I can completely understand that. Quinn Ewers was getting his face drugged through the dirt. Arch Manning comes in for a changeup, and it didn't work. So what's that going to be like in a bigger setting when you're the guy and there's no, oh, this is the big backup quarterback. And let's not forget, you're a Manning. No one's looking at the quarterback behind you. They're all looking at you. So this is going to be tremendous pressure for Arch Manning coming into this season. I think in terms of a quarterback jump, speaking of a transfers moments ago, Mateer going from Washington State to Oklahoma. Oklahoma having up and down quarterback play for a number of years now, and it being a high pressure season for Brent Venables. We'll talk about coach pressure later, but you got to put Venables on that list. Mateer has to work to help Venables keep his job. I think that's a huge jump, Washington State to Oklahoma in the SEC, even if there aren't tremendous expectations for Oklahoma to even make the college football playoff, but just be a winning football team and make a significant bowl game. Mateer has to be a big reason why, and he had a good performance at Washington State, obviously warranted getting a bigger job, but I think you have to look at Mateer as a guy that has to make a jump for the Sooners to be better.
The one thing I will counter argue with is a good selling point there is Ben Arbuckle is coming with him from Pullman. So he already understands the offense. And also the quarterbacks coach comes in from Washington State as well. So it's like having that third teacher on the field. It's a student teacher for the rest of the offense while Arbuckle and everyone else is trying to get up to speed.
I think the thing, Mateer is such an interesting one, and we're going to talk about Oklahoma in a minute, but is he the most underrated potentially quarterback in the SEC right now? Because everybody's talking about Lagway, Manning. You mentioned Sellers. We mentioned Nussmeier. Is he the guy that nobody's really talking about?
Oh my God! Let's not with this stuff again. I can't with the Bo Beulah slander right now. I can't, or the propaganda.
Slander? Oh, no,
the propaganda.
It's propaganda. Yeah.
Is he the guy that everybody's looking like? Could we get to the end of the year and maybe the Cam Ward effect is just, well, the Washington State quarterback is just taking over my mind, and I'm not calling him Cam Ward, but could we get to the end of the year and say like, man, John Mateer was like that guy? Now I know that maybe that's hard with how Oklahoma has looked the last couple of years, but is that crazy to think that could happen?
It's not crazy. Here's what I will say. He's in my top 10 quarterbacks for 2025 already. So he's already viewed to me as one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC.
I don't think he's getting that national love though. I'm glad he's getting the Cole love. I don't think he's getting the love ever. I think he's like 7th or 8th on most people's SEC lists.
I will give Tom this credit. I am very excited to see Bo Beulah working in Kirby Moore's offense for the sample size that we saw. But I think the most underrated quarterback in college football right now is the one that we overhyped last year. It's Nico Iamaleava. Because let's just talk about it for a second. This is a guy that at the season's end was taking the necessary strides to be the X factor for this Tennessee team. There were so many moments where you watched as he was delivering strikes downfield in the Georgia game, and Dante Thornton dropped a pass, and Brew McCoy dropped a pass, and they couldn't connect with a Chris Brazzell. And how many times were you watching as they couldn't get good pass protection, but Nico was able to maneuver outside the pocket and deliver clean strikes. And I think that he started to figure things out the way that Heupel wanted him to, but it was already too late because of the supporting cast around him was really struggling. Now, the selling point for me is we've already seen what a quarterback does in year 2 of Josh Heupel's system. Hendon Hooker took a massive step forward after coming on in from Virginia Tech. He led he led Tennessee to a victory over Alabama. They were in the running for a college football playoff berth. He was in the running for a Heisman Trophy before he tore his ACL against South Carolina. And you saw the connectivity with the wide receivers play. The thing that was really important about that, guys, is that they didn't have an elite running back. They had 3 solid running backs. So no more Dylan Sampson to just go ahead and be your bell cow. You have to trust a Star Thomas from Duke. You have to trust a Deshaun Bishop. You have to trust some other guys that you're bringing on in. Now it's time to see what Nico can be. And if we get the version that we saw down the stretch with the game against Vanderbilt, with the game against Georgia, if Mike Matthews can be that wide receiver 1, if Braylon Staley can take another step forward going into this system, if you get Chris Brazzell on the same page, if Ethan Davis can be a quality tight end, or Miles Kitselman, if David Sanders Jr., the 5-star from Charlotte, comes on in and locks down that right side of the offensive line, I think that the way that we talked about Nico going into 2024 is the way we will be talking about Nico to close out 2025. That's just my 2 cents of the words when it comes to him. I really think that he can take that step forward. I think that he's going to build that rapport with some of the younger receivers. And if he does that, watch out for Tennessee. Their schedule is extremely manageable to where they should be at least in the conversation for a college football playoff berth.
Yeah, I think one of the more interesting points about this, especially when you talk about the help that guys will have, I think it's a big deal for both Aller and Lagway specifically that their running games are so strong, and it takes some of that pressure off of them to not game manage, because they're going to be asked to go out and win games a lot of times, but to just relieve some of that like, you got to be the guy. Where, like you just mentioned with Tennessee, with Texas, like do those quarterbacks have to go be the guy? Oklahoma, and that could very well contribute. And I think that's kind of an interesting angle of this. Thank you for watching this episode of The Power 2. This was part of a live show that you can get right now by clicking the link on the screen. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed to College Football Addiction so you don't miss any of The Power 2.